Good evening and happy Wednesday, or as Al likes to say, happy hump day. This is L. Steven Swartz, host of Swartz Talking Sports. So I want to thank everyone out there for tuning in this Wednesday night, 8 o'clock. If you have not seen the show, hit the subscribe button. Like us, comment, let us know how you want this show to go. We have some big news that we're going to talk about at the conclusion of the show, so I urge you to stick around. You don't want to miss that. We've got a great guest tonight, basically talking about everything that is exploding in the sports world. The number one topic, NIL, transfer portal. We've got the man that's going to decipher it all. But before we bring on tonight's special guest, let me bring on my two amazing co-hosts. First of all, 1978 national championship quarterback from Florida A&M University and current voice of the Rattlers basketball and football broadcast with Melvin Beal, our man in Jacksonville, Al the Rattler Chester.
If I was in Spain, my brother, I would say Buenos noches.
Wow,
okay.
Since
I'm sitting here in Jacksonville, greetings from Jacksonville, Florida, my brother from another mother.
Okay, Al, so last week it was Japanese. Tonight it's Spanish. I don't know. Do we have any Hebrew in the moving forward here? Going to shock me with that. So, Al, thanks so much for jumping in tonight. We're going to have a good show. I think we're going to get a lot of questions answered from our special guest. And let me bring on tonight's second co-host, our man all the way from New York, Nueva York. See, there you go, Al. And now he's Leland's own, our neighbor, Benny the Bookster. Ben!
Hey, guys. Good evening. How you guys doing?
How you doing, Benny?
I'm doing good, Al. How you doing?
How'd you hit him today, man?
I almost broke my personal best on Sunday, 77.
77.
All right.
77.
Wow.
77. Very, very good. All right. Well, listen, without further ado, we got some people out there. We're going to be talking NIL. We're going to be talking what it's like to be a sports agent, how to negotiate professional contracts, arbitration. our special guest has sat in an arbitration. He's won them for both the team and the player. I think maybe the only arbitrator to ever do so. So let's bring on tonight's special guest. He is the chair of the Collegiate and Professional Sports Law Practice at Lewis Brisbois. Brisbois. I keep getting that wrong. I want to say French. Brisbois out of Arizona.
You want to be French.
We want to be French. There he is. It is Mr. Gregg Clifton. Greg, thanks so much for joining.
Thanks for having me, Les. Pleasure to be here.
All right. Well,
Esquire,
listen.
good to see you.
Esquire.
Same here, guys.
So, Greg, every week we seem to fall on this question about, and we'll get to the NIL thing because that's just opened up Pandora's box, what happened at the University of Tennessee. But we talk about professional contracts, and these guys get paid an exorbitant amount of money. Oh my God, the average person makes $70,000. These guys are making $500, $600, $700 million, and they renegotiate, they hold out, and they want more and more and more. So we wanted to talk to the guy who negotiates these deals, how they're negotiated. What language might be like in a deal like that? What happens when a guy renegotiates a contract? And, want to get your history. Were you always into sports? How did you get into being into the sports management business? It's something I would have loved to have done years ago, but, your journey, how it's taken you from New Jersey to Massachusetts all the way out to Arizona. And I guess you want to come back to Massachusetts because you love the weather so much.
Especially this time of the year, right? We're getting to spring.
There you go.
It's getting to be nice.
We got some spring.
We skip January and February, though.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to shovel that snow. So, Al, why don't we have you lead us off? You're always into the, how did you get started and where did you go? So I'm going to leave it to the Rattler here to get things started.
Well, Esquire, I tell you what, man. Tonight I feel like we're going to get all the answers to the test. We've been talking about this stuff all year, for about 15 months. And it's so much out there, man. But before we get started, tell us about you. Did you play any sports growing up? And then roll us right into the sports management, sports agent piece. And then share some of the talented elite athletes that you represented.
Sure, happy to do that. I always aspired to be in sports, but back in the day when you and I were younger, Al, there was really only one way you could get into sports, and that was to be an agent. And so I went to college, and then I decided to go to law school. And when I was in law school, trying to get a job in work in sports, get some experience was very difficult because most teams did not have a general counsel at that time. They would just use outside counsel. So the reality is what I did was I got a chance to intern with the New Jersey Nets basketball team in their PR department and then work with them, and then got introduced to, believe it or not, general counsel of the Sports Authority, which was the preeminent sports place in the country, really, at that time, between the Giants, the Jets, the Devils, the Nets, the horse racing, etc. And ironically enough, the general counsel was run by the state attorney general's office. He hated sports. He was, ironically enough, he was an environmental lawyer, because anybody knows anything about the Meadowlands knows it was built on swampland, which was mostly polluted. So I got a chance to get involved in a lot of things in my second summer of law school and all during my third year of law school that I probably had no business getting involved in as a law student. But fortunately, he was very kind to me, and he gave me an opportunity to get exposed to some of these things, from TV deals to arena and issues with television contracts, etc. So that's what I ended up doing. And then I finished law school, still was unable to get into the agent side of the business. So I went to work for a large labor law firm because I thought I would try and hone my skills a little bit more when it came to arbitrations and collective bargaining and all the things that I thought would be kind of important for me if I really wanted to work in sports. And ironically enough, a few years later, I was running the sports law. Basically, it was a panel thing in the State Bar of New Jersey, and I was heading it up. And we had kind of what we would call now a webinar. Back then, it was just called a conference. And someone heard me speak and introduced me to Bob Wolf, the famous sports agent, who I'd always aspired to work for when I was an undergrad in college. So my life went kind of full circle from 18 to probably 28, and met with him, and I was fortunate enough to be hired by him. And then my world of being a sports agent really kind of took off, and able to work with him and have exposure to some of his great clients, from Larry Bird to Larry King to New Kids on the Block, Marky Mark before he was Mark Wahlberg, and Doug Flutie. I mean, we had an incredible array of athletes in all areas, television broadcasters. So it was a great chance for me. The problem was literally 3 years to the day I started, he had a heart attack. I was on the phone with him at 5 o'clock. He had a heart attack and he died at 8. Oof. So it was a very sad day for me and obviously for everybody at Wolf Associates. But the family allowed us to keep the business going, and we diversified it. We grew it into a bunch of different areas, including golf representation and event management and stuff. So we did that for about 6 or 7 years. And then Mom and the family decided to sell it, and we got sold. And then the next 15 or 20 years, I worked with two other agencies, continuing to represent athletes and having a lot of fun doing it.
Splendid. Hey, man, I remember Ron Wolf from back in the day. I remember him being legendary.
Oh, yeah.
Legendary.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he was an interesting guy. He was incredibly bright, incredibly good to his players, and he was ahead of his time. And he has certain philosophies that I've tried to adapt, whether it's as a labor lawyer or as a sports agent or a sports lawyer. The first one is both sides have to feel like they have a win. You have to create an environment where both sides feel like they have a win, because he used to say to me, Greg, I never forget, we flew to Calgary to get done with Doug Flutie's deal with the Calgary Stampeders. We're flying back, and that's a long trip through Utah and then back to Boston. And he was saying, this is why I told you about both sides have to feel like they won. We're gone now. Doug is left in Calgary without us there every day. So his owner has to feel as though he got a fair deal. And 90% of the time, the fair deal was usually a record deal when Bob was negotiating it. So it was all about his style. He had an approach to it. I used to call it, and I still do, fist in the velvet glove, which is you punch as hard as anybody, but you try and do it in a way when it comes to negotiating to get the best deal for your client, but doing it in a way that's professional, respectful. You don't yell, you don't curse, you don't scream. I never forget, I was in the office of a Major League general manager years ago negotiating a contract literally for a player, and a phone rang and there was another agent calling in. And he said, watch this. And literally within 2 minutes, he had it on the speakerphone. The agent was cursing at him and calling him all kinds of things for not caving in. He said, does he actually think I'm going to cave in and give him what he wants? Never going to happen. So I've always remembered that, how Bob Wolf's philosophy worked, and then I also saw it in play and in action when it came to this general manager. So good learning curve.
Before we continue, I have to give special thanks to Howard Bloom out there, because Howard is the one who hooked us up with Mr. Greg Clifton. So Howard, he's actually listening. He's saying Tom Glavine, David Wells, those are some of your former clients in baseball. 2 left-handed pitchers. One's in the Hall of Fame. One was a great postseason pitcher in David Wells.
Howard, just so you know, Les was one of my mentors. Howard was a great teacher, and probably to this day he could still be a great teacher of labor law. Very expansive, very, very experienced, and so knowledgeable and so helpful to me in my career. So thank you to him as well.
All right. So now we have some questions. So everyone out there, Joni is not with us. She's actually in Maryland till Wednesday. Congratulations, Joni, a new grandma. 5th, Landon,
awesome.
Landon, Brian Hoffman. So congratulations to Sarah and Sam and sisters Sydney and Zoe.
That's the future.
There we go. There we go. So she's not here asking the question. She's going to do it online here and try to hit me up here. So everyone out there that's listening, please get your questions ready for Greg. He's going to answer them to his fullest. He's going to get to the bottom of all this craziness in these NIL deals.
Ooh.
I got a question for you. Greg. When you started in the sports agency business, and how do you solicit players? I know a little bit about it. Do you go after, was it football primarily? Was it baseball primarily? And how did you make contact with the players? Was it through family members? Was it through in college SIDs? How did you make that initial introduction to kind of have your pitch to become their agent? And what is your pitch? If they wanted to go with you, what is your pitch? What are you going to do? Obviously, you're going to go negotiate a contract, but what else comes with having Greg Clifton represent me?
Well, I think, when I was first getting started with Bob, and he did not have much of a baseball division at the time. He had Tommy Glavine already. He was a Massachusetts kid.
Bill Ricca.
He was only in AA at the time. So I kind of inherited him. And to this day, I still remain close friends with he and his family. I think the biggest thing more than anything else was service, knowledge, and experience. There's a lot of agents out there right now, especially now, as we're going to be talking about with the NIL stuff. There's a lot of kids who are trying to use the NIL to break into the business. And as I speak at law schools, I try to caution them about learning and being knowledgeable, and don't going out there and do your clients and yourself a disservice by not taking the time to read the state law, to understand the rules and the regulations. And I think that's the biggest separator, is that you have to be willing to learn the rules and learn the collective bargaining agreements, know what the players' rights are, and really focus on that to be able to help them and guide them. The other thing which has changed so much over the last several years is, when I was in the prime of my agent career, a player would buy a house and perhaps get a beautiful home. And I used to always have a very simple philosophy for really good players. I used to say, let's get to age 30. I want you to have $5 million in the bank, no debt, your house paid for, and you can live the rest of your life very comfortably on government bonds. You can live on $250,000 to $300,000 a year for the rest of your life. So now these athletes have really become mini corporations. So huge change, as you mentioned at the beginning of the show, Les, players signing $300, $400, $500 million contracts. That amount of money, the magnitude of that, requires so much more, what I'll say, expertise around the table, or as I like to call it, a circle of trust. You need to have a good accountant. You need to have good estate planning people. And that's kind of the role that my firm now at Lewis Brisbois, what we tried to do is help agents who might not have the experience in all these areas, but we're not a threat to them because I'm not an agent any longer. But we can help them with all these various areas that they are dealing with that they might not have a lot of expertise in, but they need to protect their clients. And it's amazing how many players now we're seeing doing advanced, creating LLCs, the tax planning, the estate planning. Because again, when you have $300, $400, $500 million coming to you guaranteed, that is a tremendous amount of wealth, and the tax planning to maximize how much you keep. And, recently a good friend of mine who's an accountant out here in Arizona just helped Guerrero with his contract with the Blue Jays. And he structured it in such a way that the signing bonus was spread out over, I believe, at least 10 years of the contract, which creates tremendous tax savings for him and also gives him the opportunity that all of that money in the signing bonus is guaranteed. So if we have a work stoppage after the 2026 season, he's still going to get that signing bonus percentage, whatever that amount of money is, in 2027, even if the baseball season is canceled. So the expertise that you surround yourself with is crucial. And the one other thing I learned years ago, you don't know everything, and accept that and be able to reach out to the people who do, whether it's prenuptial agreements, you name it, whatever it is, you need to have expertise surrounding, as I said, to create a circle of trust to be able to help these players, especially in today's world.
Well, we have a question. We have a couple of questions. So this is from Barry Smith out in California. He's in Northern California. He asks, Gregg, what was the hardest negotiation you were involved in?
Great question. Negotiations, people always think the hardest negotiations are the ones for the biggest amount of money. And I used to always say the hardest player to represent is that, well, now there is a 26-man roster, but going back to then, was the 26th man on the roster. Because, as I've had general managers in hockey describe to me, I had a player, I'll never forget this. I've always remembered this line. He's since passed away. But he described my player as a nice spice. I said, what does that mean? He goes, Gregg, when you have your steak, it's probably pretty good, right? If you go to a nice restaurant. But if you get the mushrooms and the peppers and the fried onions, however you like it, it makes it taste better. Your client is a fried onion. He goes, he's a spice that makes the steak taste better. But I can win without him. He just makes us a little bit better. So the biggest challenge is whenever you have a negotiation like that, you don't have a tremendous amount of leverage because you're trying to help that player get a guaranteed contract and help him maximize his value and opportunity. The easier contracts, believe it or not, are if you're superstar athletes, where you basically shoot for the moon and get as close as you can do it, because those players have the leverage when you have multiple teams bidding for their services. It boils down to a little bit more where that particular athlete would like to play. And I've seen that with David Wells, Tommy Glavine, a number of other free agent players in all the sports. It really boils down to when they have the leverage, how do they want to use the leverage, and do they want to stay where they're at? And that's an important part because, again, when you're dealing about the money you're dealing with nowadays, their happiness, their family's happiness is very, very important. I saw recently in an article where Corbin Burns, the player who just signed with the Diamondbacks this offseason, who left and was a free agent, came here. One of the reasons he came here is he lives here. He has a house here. Now, he's still got a tremendous amount of money, don't get me wrong. But one of the important factors was his family's happiness, his happiness to be able to be here for spring training and be able to live here year-round where he has a home. So there's a number of other factors, assuming the dollars are somewhat equal when players make those decisions.
Well, first of all, I am listening to you on every word here. We got questions popping up all over the place. We got a great audience out there right now. First of all, Benny, wouldn't you want Gregg to represent you? Could you imagine what he could have done for your baseball career?
Oh yeah, definitely.
We'll get Benny to ESPN here soon.
How do you feel that it was easier to represent players of years ago, because now with so much money, I mean, players, they're not as loyal as they used to be. Guys used to want to stay with their teams. So was it easier to represent them as compared to now?
That's a great question. There is a little bit of a hired gun mentality, but I think at the same point, at the end of the day, players all want one thing. They want that ring on their finger, right? Regardless of the sport. I saw a clip last night, and I wasn't looking for it particularly, but I look at a bunch of blogs and websites, and it was Rick Fox. I don't know if you remember him, the basketball player.
North Carolina.
Yeah, sure. And,
He was talking
Lakers.
about
Celtics drafted him.
Yeah.
But that's an interesting point. They're both with both teams. He was with the Celtics, and this is his wording. He turned down $33 million from the Celtics as their captain, but he was, for some reason, thought he had a better chance of winning. He wanted another championship, and he went to the Lakers. The Lakers only had a veterans exception at the time, which was only worth $1 million. So he turned down $33 million, according to his own words, and signed with the Lakers on a one-year deal for $1 million.
With the ring.
So, I mean, that's a great example, Benny, about what matters and what's important. At the end of the day, I think it also matters what point a player is in his career.
Right.
So if a player is already secured a tremendous amount of wealth to his first or second contract, he can become a little bit more selective, and some of the priorities are no longer money-based. It might be lifestyle-based.
Yeah.
The other factor, which has become really important, and was important when I was still working as an agent, is tax planning. Because when you sign with the Texas Rangers or the Florida Marlins in baseball, or the Dolphins or Tampa Bay Buccaneers in football, you're paying zero state income tax.
Yeah.
You're playing for the Lakers or the 49ers or the Rams, you're paying about 14% in state income tax.
Wow.
So do some quick math. If you sign for $30 million, 0 versus 14%, doing some quick math in my head, that's about $4.2 million.
That's why
in income tax.
A lot of cheese.
And I always
a lot of cheese.
A-Rod went to Texas because of that.
I used to always tease David Wells. He was from California. I used to always tease him. He listened to me, thank God, and he lived in Florida. And he had no state income tax while he played. And then when he retired, I said, okay, now use your savings that you saved and go buy your house in California. And that's what he did. And now he recently just moved back to Florida again for lifestyle purposes. But the tax factor does become important in some of the analysis that you see with these tremendously large contracts.
Yep.
And you look at the dollars that are being spent on these state taxes.
Yep.
Now, Esquire, a quick question. Is it where you play or where you work or where you live where you pay the taxes? Because sometimes you can live in one state and play someplace else. Is it where you earn your money or is it the state that you live in?
It's a great question. We've seen a lot of those issues going on with a lot of these states as the dollars have come up. So, for example, if I play for the Texas Rangers, when I go to California and I play the Sacramento A's or the Giants or the Dodgers or the Padres, I have to prorate those days. So let's say I'm in California for 16 days of the season, and let's say it's 10% of my season. I'm rounding for simplicity. And I'm making $1 million. That means $160,000 of my earnings are subject to California tax. So even though I don't live in California, but when I play there, and the problem is, unlike us, not that I go to California very often, when it comes to athletes, the state California Franchise Board can break down exactly when a player is playing and earning money in that state, right? They look at the schedule. He was there on April 10th, 11th, and 12th. Okay, that's 3 days. And what's happened, we had a fight years ago, believe it or not, true story, where the team flew in the day before. It actually boiled down to when the team arrived there. And I took the position that they were there for less than 12 hours. They got in at 8 o'clock at night, slept there, and then they didn't play until the next day. California was trying to tax the players, in particular my player, for that day, even though they didn't get there until 8 o'clock at night. We fought it and we won because it was not there for more than half of a day. Because their theory is, even though you're there playing or whatever you're doing, you're still utilizing and have the protection of fire, police, and all the services of the state of California,
Wow.
and therefore you owe tax for those days you're in the state. So it's a very interesting thing, and it all started years ago. You're going to laugh, within Philadelphia, where I guess he was the controller of the city of Philadelphia. He quit and he went to private practice as an accountant, and he went to the city and he started with the New York Giants, and it wasn't as much money as it now. And he said, all the Giants, when they come in, they play the Eagles, we should subject them to Philadelphia city tax, because most of those players, even if you prorated at the time, was 14 games, 1/14 of Lawrence Taylor's salary was almost the same or more than what most of the residents in the city of Philadelphia earned. So it really started there, and it mushroomed because there was a lot of tests to that and they lost. And then a bunch of states started. And now, professional athletes' tax return is usually a few inches thick because of all the states and all the cities where they have to file. Now, they do get credit in their home state if they have it, but it really is a voluminous effort and responsibility for the accountants for all these players.
All right, guys, we've got a ton of questions. We're having some internet issues, I think, too, so hopefully we can clear those up. Listen, I know Mike Miller and Barry have been talking NIL. We're going to get into NIL after the break, but John has a good question. Howard Bloom has a question out there. Doug Callahar has a question out there. It better not be about me losing 8 golf balls. John, this is the question to Gregg. Over your career, how much has data analytics and the so-called nerds changed the business, and who led the way on using them, the organization or the player? We all know Bill James. We know the name Bill James. To your standpoint, how much has it changed things?
Well, it's interesting. I'll segue into salary arbitration a little bit. That's where a lot of these analytics and these data-driven statistics become somewhat relevant. But the challenge you have is that we only have 1 hour to present our case in a salary arbitration.
1 hour,
so
Ben.
A lot of these, 1 hour, and then you have a half an hour for a rebuttal. But your case in chief is 1 hour, and typically I'm able to get through about 100 various slides analyzing the player's career, his statistical achievements, his comparative players, and things like that. But what's really interesting is a lot of the data-driven analytics that we see now have not really entered into the arbitration mix, because most of the arbitrators, there's 3 arbitrators in every hearing, are not that sophisticated perhaps on some of these data analytics. We've seen WAR and a few other of the statistical criteria that have become more common enter into the arbitration space. But I think it's a little bit more that teams use it to analyze and assess draft picks, players in the minor leagues. How are they doing? How are they performing? What are we doing with them? Trades. How do we analyze the trade? How do we assess the performance of a player? And a lot of these analytics, which are incredibly, unbelievable and valuable to the teams. But I think what we've seen is now what's evolving. It's kind of a hybrid space where you have teams that have all the analytics, but when they go evaluate a potential draft pick, they don't only look at the analytics, but they also have to do a thing where they have to measure and watch a player's performance. And I always remember I had a player years ago, went to a smaller school. He was a pitcher, didn't throw very hard. He was like 89, 90. And the Cubs, never forget, I had 3 first-round picks that year, and they picked my client. And it was kind of a surprise. We thought he was going to go little bit later, he went in the first round to one of these picks. And when I spoke to the gentleman who's the scouting director who picked him, I said, Al, well, what made you pick John? He said, you want me to tell you when I decided to pick John? He was pitching against Yale. And he said he should have dominated the game. He didn't last through the first inning. He just got pummeled. And he said, I watched him. He went to the bench. He didn't hang his head. He picked everybody up on the bench. He patted everybody on the back. He was greeting every player when they came back and won the game as they crossed home plate. He said, he had a bad game. Every pitcher has a bad game once in a while. But how he acted and how he reacted to that bad game let me know he's the kind of guy that I want to invest a draft pick in.
Boy, he wouldn't have wanted to invest in me.
That's a use of visual analytics because he measured the player's heart, not only how hard he threw or the other analytics that we see. But I do think it's a combination nowadays. And God rest his soul, Kevin Towers, who was the general manager of the Padres for a long time, and then he went to the Diamondbacks. I always remember him telling me, it has to be a combination, Greg. You can't only do analytics and you can't only do visual scouting. We have to merge the two together so we can get a look at some of these analytical factors, but also measure the performance of the player. How does he handle himself? If he's a pitcher and a teammate makes an error behind him, how does he handle it? Does he pat that player on the back, pick him up, or does he sulk? And does he yell at him? These are all the different visual variables, and the analytics stand for themselves. And, we have people now in baseball whose career is literally analyzing all the analytics. And it's amazing how bright some of these young players are, as young people are, rather doing these analytics analysis.
Yeah.
Well, I just watched Moneyball the other night. You want to talk about there's Billy Bean and all that stuff. That really kicked it into high gear.
That's right.
A couple of questions, too. I know Howard Bloom, I've got one for you. I know Mike, stand by. Barry, we get the NIL thing after the break. But Douglas Gallagher, affectionately known as Big Daddy, how do you manage a player that continues to make bad PR decisions for themselves in the team they play for? So you are representing a player. And in this day and age, it didn't happen back maybe then, but social media, I'm going to throw a player out there. Let's get a what if. Al and I talked about it the other day. John Morant, Grizzlies. He's suspended last year. He comes back this year. He's running down the court making this gesture. They say, we're going to fine you. Then he says, well, good. I'll do the hand grenade thing. I'll pull a hand grenade. If you're representing a player like that, what do you say to him? Like, will you wake up? Like, what do you do?
I think
to
what
a player?
you want to do is try and get inside his head.
I don't think anybody can get inside his head.
Well, everyone has a point you can get in their head. You have to figure out what is his motivation. Why is he doing that? Is he doing that so he's on Sports Center? Is he doing that to get attention? Is he doing it because he's really angry about something? What is he doing? I've had players like that. David Wells, God love him, who to this day I'm still good friends with. I've known him for 35 years, more than that even, probably closer to 40. And the bottom line is he's always a person who spoke his mind.
Right.
And it's got him in trouble a little bit, but he doesn't have a filter. And he always says to me, Greg, if someone is respectful to me, I treat them with respect, whether it's the custodian, the janitor at the stadium, or if the president and owner of a team. But if they're disrespectful to me, I don't treat them with respect. So that has always been David's modus operandi, and it's served him well in his life because everyone knows him as a truthful and honest guy. But he has never participated in something like you're talking about. And I think it's got to be a combination between the agent, the team, the league, and trying to figure out what's going to motivate him to stop him to do this. Because at the end of the day, what's happened in sports is the players, especially in the NBA, in my opinion, I hate to use the expression, but they run the league more than the league runs them. Right. So you have a lot of this power and authority that the players have gained where the league doesn't have the control. I mean, you watched LeBron last week come out and warm up without a shirt on, and you saw Isaiah Thomas make a comment about it. Well, Isaiah Thomas is an ancient history, but unfortunately, he played in an era where they played tough, they played hard, but they respected the game. Nowadays, I don't know if all the players have the same respect, and that's one of the challenges as a commissioner or an owner or a coach that you have when you have these players who literally could be 9th, 10th, 11th man on the bench making $5-6 million a year.
Yeah.
So I think the target would be to try and sit down with him and get inside his head a little bit and try and figure out if that's the reputation he wants to have going forward, if that's the legacy he wants to leave. When he has children someday, he might have children now, I don't know.
Yes,
Do you
he
want your
does.
children to see their dad, pretending he has a gun or a hand grenade? And that's the way I would approach it, and try and make him own it a little bit.
Well, let's go to two more questions. We're 32 minutes in. This is, and like I said, we've got some special announcements to make regarding the show later on. But real quick, I want to get to Rich Trotter's comment, because Rich kind of piggybacked on what I asked you earlier, which was he just wants to know, how do you get your clients? Like, how do you meet them? Kind of like, so do you target?
Well, there's a lot of ways.
Do you target these guys? I mean,
yeah, you have to target.
Okay.
You have to target. There's a uniqueness. As an attorney, if you are practicing as an attorney, you have a limitation on solicitation. As a practicing agent, you don't necessarily have that same. It's a dichotomy that a lot of people walk that gray fine line between the two. But typically, you have what I'll say intelligence between Baseball America and all these other scouting services. So you can identify who the best young talent is coming up. And then we reach out to the family and you try and introduce yourself, try and set up a meeting, and then try and find out what it is they're looking for in representation. Because there's a lot of different, approaches. There's a small firm, which might limit itself to the number of clients they have. You could go to a mega firm, which has multiple hundreds of clients. What is it that you're looking for? What is the type of service that you want to have? Scott Boras, who's a very well-respected agent, a former competitor of mine, he has a team that people go out, they identify future talent, they introduce themselves. He doesn't get involved then. He gets involved a little bit later on as what I would call in the close meeting.
He's the closer.
And then even servicing the players when they're younger, he probably doesn't get involved that much on a daily basis. I was doing it. I was 24/7. If a player had a problem in Seattle, back then it was a little bit different because you had the ability to keep it in Seattle because you didn't have the internet and things like you have now. But I was the buck stopped with me. I didn't delegate anybody. I wait to this day as a practicing attorney with my clients. I try to.
Was it? We're losing Greg. Yeah, Greg, looks like you get kind of a, internet issue on your end.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with my internet. I apologize.
Oh, that's okay. That's all right. So real quick, Howard Bloom asked, what information does Major League Baseball make available to its representatives to win an arbitration?
Another great question. So the way it works is Major League Baseball Players Association, which is the registered agents for all Major League Baseball players, they register agents. So agents have to take a test nowadays, which they didn't before. And then as a registered agent, you have access to a statistical database. Major League Baseball does something similar where you have access to a statistical database, which is not that unique. I mean, you could get it with Baseball Reference and a number of the other websites that are existing out there now. But that's really what it is. You're able to try and pull all this information from a career basis, 1 year basis, analyzing. A few years ago, I had a case where I was able to win it for a team where the agent was arguing that the pitcher was a great pitcher and he had a great year. There's only one problem. He forgot about August and September. He was trying to hold him out as being this great pitcher. And as I brought up in my case, unfortunately, I said my opposing counsel doesn't realize that the season goes from the end of September and into the first week of October sometimes. And this pitcher, I don't know how, he ended up having a horrible August, and he ended up being statistically the worst starting pitcher in baseball in both leagues in September. So while he had a great 3.5, 4 months to begin the year, he completely just tailed off. And it helped us win the case because, again, it was a whole year of statistical analysis that was important. So that's what you have to try and do. You're looking for, as an agent, the strengths in your client's case while acknowledging the weaknesses. Similarly, on the management side, you also want to do something along those lines where you have to listen to what the players' arguments are, have your own arguments, but then try and confront or refute some of the positions that the agents are taking as they present their case.
All right, let's get one more question in. We'll go to a break. We'll come back and we'll talk NIL because it seems to be a lot of people interested in what's going on. What's your vision for
Hopefully
NIL?
they know more than me.
I don't know. I think you got a pretty good handle on what might be happening here. But Rob asked, and I don't know if you can talk to this. I don't know. Maybe Benny and Al have something on this. But his question is the NFL payroll cap really legit, or is it all smoke and mirrors?
Well, like any cap, there's soft caps, hard caps. the interest of what happens with the NFL is those caps. If you sign a $100 million contract for 5 years, it only affects the cap on a prorated basis over the length of that contract. So it doesn't hit you in year one. The NBA is a little bit more of a harder cap where you have to make roster decisions, even trades where you're trying to essentially fill slots in the puzzle. How this guy is making this much, and that's why sometimes you see teams make trades where they trade a player really to just open up slot room for the upcoming offseason. And in baseball, we don't have any limitation yet except for the luxury tax, which is essentially like a salary cap, and a number of teams fight to stay below that. We've seen, your favorite team, the Boston Red Sox, the last couple of years, try and get underneath that tax, and now they're spending more money again because they got under it, so they get that break of a lower tax threshold and a lower tax payment. So, you see the Dodgers and the Yankees continuing to spend, and then you have some teams that will never come close to that tax threshold. But that's going to be one of the major issues, I think, in the next collective bargaining negotiations is how do we handle this, and how do we have these teams that are below the threshold? Do we create a minimum floor? Because right now, believe it or not, you could have 26 players in the big leagues all making the major league minimum. There's nothing that stops a team from doing that. You might not draw anybody in the stands,
right?
But you have the legal right to do that, and then share in the TV revenue, et cetera, and still make a profit. So, there's a lot of uproar in Pittsburgh about that and how Pittsburgh is handling their players and competing. So it's baseball is a different world because they also don't have the revenue sharing that you see in the NFL when it comes to the national television contracts. Baseball is more local, regional driven than the national contracts when it comes to the revenue streams, which, Commissioner Goodell has done such a great job. A lot of people might criticize him, but he's done a tremendous job of growing revenue from all these different television contracts that he's negotiated.
Let me ease one in. Let me ease one in on Greg right quick. Greg, while we're talking about this and the contracts, do you do anything with the players outside of baseball with corporate contracts or sponsorships or deals that they have outside of baseball, football, or basketball?
Absolutely, and that's an interesting one. I'm glad you raised it, Al, because I'll just tell you a funny story from years ago. When Tommy Glavine was, winning Cy Youngs and playing for Atlanta, Atlanta had a sponsorship relationship with Coca-Cola. So we were approached by 7-Up, the alternative Pepsi and 7-Up, for him to do and enter into deals with them. So we did. And at the time, Major League Baseball, through the Braves, filed a grievance against us. And they tried to claim that we were in breach because we didn't have the right to do that because we were violating the sponsorship agreement that the team had. So we got the Players Association to back us. We eventually settled where he was allowed to finish that deal. And then there was some language changes that were made, which are very interesting, which now prohibits a player. So if a team has a huge sponsorship deal with Coca-Cola, we'll use that same example, they can't do, advertising. They maybe can make an appearance and get away with it, but you're not going to see a Pepsi player versus a Coke player on a specific team because they have to respect the Coke relationship. So that's the best example I can give. And we're seeing the same thing with NIL, which we're going to speak to in a minute.
Yep.
The same thing with colleges might have sponsorships with certain donors or certain companies, and these athletes want to go, hey, I got a deal with, Under Armour, and I know we're a Nike school. Too bad, I want to do it. And there has to be some limitations or prohibitions in that contract that prevent that player from doing it.
Well, actually, that's a great segue into NIL. Al, great question, too, because we still have more coming up. So why don't we just take a break? We're already 41 minutes in. Hopefully we can clear these technical difficulties. We keep having these rolling blackouts here in North Carolina tonight. But it might be Phoenix, to be honest with you. No, I don't know. We've had some, I don't know. I think we're kind of all over the place here tonight. So listen, everyone stay tuned. Hang in there with us. We'll have more Greg Clifton, Al Chester, and Benny the Book, and yours truly when we come back.
Jim's Pawn and Guns Shop, located at 4212 Oleander Drive, Wilmington's #1 firearms dealer. Sporting a large inventory, including all brands of handguns and long guns, a full stock of accessories, and all types of ammunition. Jim's Pawn and Gun Shop has it all, including the best customer service in the area.
Before the lights go out, call Wilmington Generators. We offer the lowest price and a 10-year warranty for all Briggs & Stratton installations. A Briggs & Stratton powers more of your home for less money. Call for a free quote. Wilmington Generators. We play with power.
Welcome back to Sports Talking Sports. I'm your host, L. Steven Sports, but you can call me Les. We've got Al the Rattler Chester, the man in the middle from Jacksonville to my right, Benny the Bookster Millie, and our special guest tonight, Gregg Clifton, chair of Collegiate Professional Sports Law Practice at Lewis Brisbois. You know something?
Brisbois.
I'm a hockey guy.
Brisbois.
I know, and
Brisbois.
I see Brisbou, and it's always been Bois. I got that like in my
Brisbois.
head. I don't know why. Brisbois.
Brisbois.
We couldn't have named ourselves Lewis and Smith, right?
No, I know. That would have been easy. All right, guys, let's get to the hot topic right now on what's been going on in sports, the world of sports. And I know we've got questions. We still got more things out here. First of all, real quick, Mike Miller, Western Michigan, 6-2 winners over BU in the Frozen Four last week. I was a little bummed out. One of my Terriers to win, but congratulations to the Broncos, their first national championship in any sport, I think. And he predicted a 5-1 win, so Mike knows his hockey, that's for sure. And hopefully we'll see you at next year's Frozen Four in Las Vegas. So let's get into the whole NIL.
Do we have to?
Yeah, we do, because this is the hot thing going on right now. And it's always been going that way. We're talking transfer portal. We're talking conference realignment. We're talking potentially college football teams breaking away from the NCAA and starting their own league and negotiating their own TV deals, which I personally think is going to happen one day. Greg, I think you'd make a great commissioner, by the way, just saying that. But, this thing's been brought to the forefront by Nico Iamaleava. I know I get it right. Iamaleava, the quarterback at Tennessee, who, let me just let people know out there, if they don't know what's going on, he was a redshirt freshman this past year, came on Tennessee 2 years ago, redshirted, signed a $2.4 million NIL deal, consortium, I think, through the University of Tennessee. $2.4 million every year he's there. He also got $350,000 his senior year. Now, I think that went to his parents, and that was part of the $2.4 million. Good quarterback, don't get me wrong, a very good quarterback, threw 19 touchdowns to 5 picks last year, but out of the 19 touchdowns, 11 were against 4 teams, and those teams had a combined losing record. When it came to, really the tough competition, when the Alabama came, and then he had to play in the playoff game against Ohio State, he didn't look too good. Let's just put it that way. He didn't play like a superstar quarterback.
Ninth-ranked quarterback.
Yeah.
Ninth-ranked quarterback in the SEC.
Ninth-ranked quarterback getting $2.4 million. What does he do? The spring games last week, he decides to skip the spring game, and he holds Tennessee ransom. I want $4 million a year for the next 3 years or 2 years I'm in school, because he redshirted 1 year, for the next 2 years. Kudos to Josh Heupel in the University of Tennessee for not caving and saying, I'm sorry, we appreciate you, what you've done here at the University of Tennessee, but we're not going to pay you this. We're not going to be extorted. We're not dealing with this. Here's your walking papers. Good luck. Now he's on the outside. He has not signed with a team. Everyone thought it would be USC or UCLA. He's a West Coast kid. Oregon said no. University of Miami head coach Mario Cristobal's come out and supported the decision that Heupel made at Tennessee. Guys, it's out of control. Greg, you're the guy with this whole thing. You've dealt with NIL. Let's look at some of these collective here, the criteria for income for NIL. This is just a few of these things. We've got endorsement deals, personal brands, athlete agreements, agent-like services, performance-based incentives, both on the field and in marketing, per delivered payments, which I don't understand what that means. Maybe, Greg, you could explain that to me. And collective agreements, which that's what I always thought it was about merchandise. NIL, guys, we argue this all the time. And, Greg, just to give you a little background, we had Darrell Walker, head coach at the University of Arkansas, Little Rock, on the show earlier. Played with the Knicks, had a nice career in the pros.
Yeah.
Came out and said, I lost my guy to a transfer portal for some money. I said, what happens? He goes, he's done. He's out of my Rolodex. I don't deal with him anymore. I wish him the best of luck, but I don't want anything to do with him. You sign a deal with me. You're loyal to me. We pay you what we pay you. You leave. You're on your own. Goodbye. Thank you very much. It was all about name, image, and likeness. If I understand and the O'Bannon thing started way back in the day. I understand if a player's not making a lot of money, comes from in a family where a situation's difficult, doesn't have a lot of money, they're selling his jersey with his name on it, and the jersey's selling for $49.99. I totally get why he is not a happy guy, because he's not getting any of that. That's part of NIL to me. He's going to get a piece of that. The Chevrolet dealership represents Al Chester's representing them. Al gets a car from Chevy for doing that and some money. Benny, I swear to God, I'm not joking. Burger King wants Benny. That's not saying you go to Burger King, Benny. But Burger King in Leland says, we want we want the Benny the Book Whopper. And they pay Benny. He deserves that. I get it. But what it's come to now is who's got the biggest checkbook? Who's writing out the biggest checks? Players, forget about loyalty anymore. They're transferring every single year from team to team because they're getting more money. And there's no guardrails on it. We've talked about it. Greg, you and I have talked about it off camera. Benny and Al talk about it all the time. What in the world do you think is going to happen? First of all, let's talk about Ayamalieva's case. Do you think somebody is going to pony up $4 million for this kid, or is he going to be groveling back at Tennessee? I know you said something about a report, him potentially coming back to Tennessee or going to another school for even less than the $2.4 million that Tennessee had with him.
Well, he's in a tough spot now because he's in the portal. So he is a free agent, for lack of a better term. So Tennessee can certainly bring him back and preserve his scholarship and honor that commitment that they made previously if they want to. I don't know if they will. I heard this afternoon, shortly before we got together, about a representative or some liaison of his was trying to reach back out to Tennessee to test the waters to see if Tennessee would be interested in having him come back. So now let's be honest. He's a very good quarterback. Tennessee's in the SEC, an incredibly competitive league that they have to win in. They can talk tough all they want, but at the end of the day, you're judged by your wins and losses.
Gotcha.
So there might be some interest. I don't know whether it's going to happen or not. Josh is a very strong, tough coach, fair but tough. I don't know if he's going to want to cave in and send a message to other players for the future that says if you decide to leave, you can come back. He might want to make an example out of him. Now, the flip side is, as someone who went into the portal, he now has no scholarship at Tennessee. He's standing, I hate the expression, but he's standing naked on a street corner. He's hoping someone's going to come and give him some clothes. Now, the timing of this, I think, is poor for him because most teams now have had spring practice. They're now getting ready, as the kids leave for the summer break and come back and get ready for the season. I'm not sure if many of the power schools and the Power Four conferences are looking to add a new quarterback in the middle to the latter part of April to get ready for the 2025 season. I just don't see that being really viable. Now, they might be only needs one taker out there, and then it becomes, okay, he finds a taker. What happens if that taker says, we only have $500,000. Hopefully you'd like it. We'd like to have you here. What does he do? Where does he go to shop his services to try and get back to that $2+ million a year if no one wants to give it to him? So he, as we've seen a lot of these things, unfortunately, as I said earlier, we have a lot of inexperienced agents. We have a lot of moms, dads, aunts, uncles, cousins, brothers, sisters who are all whispering in the ears of these athletes, telling them, are you kidding me? You deserve $30 million, $20 million. And they're just not really cognizant of the marketplace and what these players deserve, recognizing that only a few short years ago, and I don't mean that it's not short years ago, but when Al was leading his team to the national championship, I don't think he had I'll take $100,000, I'll take $50,000. He had nothing, maybe a pat on the back and a hug once in a while for a great job. These kids
Coke and a smile.
There we go, Coke and a smile. And if you took the Coke, it was an NCAA violation. But anyway, these kids are spoiled. They're getting these tremendous opportunities, which, as you said, Les, they deserve. Not saying they shouldn't get paid, but the reality is we are in a very difficult situation because now, if you want me to touch on it, this all started by a female state senator in the state of California.
Why am I surprised by the state of California?
Well, I've spoken to her several times. She's very eloquent, really bright lady, and she wanted to create NIL, and I forget the exact name of the bill now, I forget, I should remember it, but anyway, she wanted to initiate it for female athletes because she felt as though the volleyball players, the softball players, the track participants, the beach volleyball players really didn't have much of a professional option when their collegiate eligibility was done. So she said, why can't we let these young women go out and make money as models, make money endorsing perfume or skincare products or sunscreen, whatever it was. So that's what she started with it. And it literally mushroomed from there to where we are now, where we have about 38 states with different NIL laws. We have NIL laws that conflict with the NCAA bylaws. We just have a mess, to be honest with you. And now we're waiting. We had a hearing last Monday on the, incredible settlement of the antitrust case for $2.8 billion is now in the stages of being finalized by Judge Wilkin, a judge in Northern California, who had the hearing where she heard all the objectors challenging the terms of the settlement. She had a few comments. They had to submit their thoughts this Monday, in response to it. So we'll see what happens, whether or not she's going to go ahead and sign off on the settlement based upon the legal standard under the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. I think she will sign off on it. And then we're going to have a whole more mess of things because you're going to have a bunch of people who are waiting. Keep in mind, this settlement does not provide an antitrust exemption. So you have the NCAA paying $2.8 billion, and literally within a week or two of the settlement being announced, 2 more antitrust lawsuits were filed against them. So normally when I enter into a settlement agreement for a client, it's to end it. It's not to say, oh, okay, we ended a bit of, we'll have a few more of these same type of lawsuits next week. So the NCAA settled $2.8 billion over a 10-year period of time, changed a number of aspects of college sports, going to change the funding. The joke, I think, is that they now have the right to pay their athletes $20.5 million, yet they're trying to maintain the position that they're not employees of the university, yet they're paying them $20.5 million,
I know, that's crazy.
$20.5 million.
So they're independent contractors. They're independent contractors, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, well, they're trying to take that position, but I think that's a tough argument they're going to have to win, but it's one that's going to come up. You also have a whole thing with Title IX, which is going to end up being a myriad of lawsuits, probably a class action against the NCAA and these schools, because they're saying as much as 85% of the distribution that they're going to get from the settlement is going to go to men's basketball
and
football, and a little bit to women's basketball. And, Title IX demands equity between men and women. And you have all these non-revenue generating sports, a number of which are female sports like field hockey, soccer, whatever they might be, who are not going to share on an equitable basis with this distribution from the $2.8 billion. Then you have collectives who are out there legally created, who are now being impacted by this settlement, where any deals in excess of $600 that the collectives might do and might present for a student athlete now have to be approved. And these collectives are saying, well, what are you talking about? We weren't at the table. You can't impact us. We're not a party to this lawsuit. So that's another whole possibility. And then you have a lot of families, unfortunately, who, based upon the settlement, there's now going to be roster limits. So you have a lot of young athletes who might not even be on scholarship, who are going to school and they're on the baseball team or the field hockey team if you're a woman, and you're not a star. You're on the team. It's part of college. You're enjoying it. Now with roster limits, they're going to lose their ability to participate. So the judge last week ago, Monday, said, why don't you grandfather these roster limits over time so that the kids that are currently playing, as they graduate, you can lower the roster limits to get down toward where your limits are in the next few years. My understanding is that was submitted on Monday in response to the judge's direction, rejected that concept as they said it's too complicated. We can't deal with it. So, I think that could lead to some more lawsuits as well. So we're not seeing any of this done and being finished. And there's one other variable here, which is important, which is not directly NIL, but, we had a labor board that was led under the Biden administration by a woman whose obsession was to have student athletes become employees under the NLRB, under the NLRA, the law that allowed them to unionize. We saw Dartmouth do it successfully, never negotiated a collective bargaining agreement, and more recently, they withdrew their petition, as did the USC case out in California. So right now we have no labor board cases pending where these student athletes are trying to become employees under that law. However, what we have is a very important case, which is still a few years away from a decision. It went up to what we call an interlocutory appeal, came back down now to the federal district court back east in Eastern District of Pennsylvania on whether or not athletes are employees under the Fair Labor Standards Act, which is a different standard than the NLRB, which is what we used to like to call it the overtime statute. So whether or not these student athletes, so we have these conferences now, we have Rutgers having to play UCLA or USC. It's all that travel time back and forth when they go to compete, compensable. So are these student athletes going to be eligible for an hourly wage and then potentially for overtime under the national federal labor laws, in this case, the Fair Labor Standards Act. So it's not going away anytime soon. That one won't be a few years until we see that one come to fruition. But I think there's a good chance that they could lose that one as well.
Because
Greg, I had a question about the Tennessee, going back to the Tennessee quarterback. Say if he does go back to Tennessee, are they legally bound to that previous thing, or can Tennessee say, you know what, we're not giving you $2.4 million, we'll give you $1 million?
I'm going to give you the classic lawyer answer, which you're going to hate. It depends. And I say that because it depends on what the clauses are in the contract.
Yeah.
Meaning that in the NIL contract, if he abandons, meaning he goes in the portal, does that vacate the terms of that agreement, which it should? And I'm sure Tennessee has lawyers that are very good and sophisticated, which would void out that agreement the second he goes into the portal. Then he'd be coming back. And that's the one way I think Tennessee might take him back. But then again, you got the old, we have a disgruntled player here. So they bring him back for $1 million.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Do they have, I don't know how good their other quarterbacks are.
They only have 2 scholarship quarterbacks right now. That's it. So, you know what the crazy thing is, guys? This is the crazy thing. SMU got the death penalty. They lost 2 seasons in essentially 15 years. It killed the program. The University of Massachusetts, 1996, their Final Four wiped out by the NCAA because Marcus Camby took improper gifts during the Final Four. Reggie Bush lost his Heisman Trophy. Subsequently, he's got it back, but he did lose it. All of these things where penalized athletes got penalized, and now what they did back then is a tip of the iceberg. It's nothing like it's going on today. Are you kidding me?
Right.
The guy was walking around campus with a necklace. Are you kidding me? And now guys are driving Bentleys. I mean, by God, look at Colorado.
Shador, yeah.
Shador, he bought his offensive tackle. The kid's 18. He's driving around in a $250,000 car.
Bentley, yeah.
I got to ask just 2 questions, and we're at an hour. Greg,
how was your Bentley when you were at Florida A&M?
Yeah, Al, where was your Bentley?
Hey, I tell you, my Bentley was a little Mustang.
There you go.
That I hope we crank up every time I took the kids.
I thought you were going to say a Matchbox Bentley.
But
you know, it's ironic. It's ironic. Today is the day that the portal opened. So I mean, it's ironic that we're having this conversation, and it should be open, I guess, for the next 15 days or whatever. But my thoughts on Nico. Nico was watching what other guys are getting. The kid that transferred from Georgia
Carson
down
Beck.
to Miami.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so he's looking. I want a bigger bag now because Carson Beck got a big bag.
Right.
You know,
It's the same thing in the
it
NFL.
boils down to, again,
I want to be
who
the
the
highest
advisors
receiver.
are,
Yeah.
who the lawyers are advising these young men and teaching them to respect the sanctity of a contract. When you enter into a deal, you must honor that deal. If you don't like it, you can try and go back. But if you're rejected, you got to honor that deal.
Yeah.
And I think that's why there's probably a lot of hesitancy from any of these other schools, because do they want to bring in a kid who's walking away from that kind of money and causing a problem, not being a good teammate, not being a good leader? Do we want him to come into our school, and especially as a quarterback, which is a leadership position? Maybe not.
Yeah,
maybe not.
Well,
Greg, let me ask you this question too. And I know, Les, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Go ahead.
How is the money dispersed to the athletes? I mean, are they given a monthly deal? Do you know? I mean, and I know every deal is autonomous. Every school is autonomous. They do their own thing.
Yes.
But
They're all
to your
different.
knowledge, yeah. Okay.
They're all different. Some are a monthly stipend that gets paid out. Some are, you have to make 3 appearances in a year. We'll pay you quarterly. It all is subject to the nature of the deal, who the entity is. Are we doing a contract with a car dealer? Are we doing a deal with a cookie company, a local restaurant? Is it a one-time deal where they're bringing the offensive line in, every Monday for 3 weeks, and we're paying them a free steak and $500 each? There's a lot of variables that are involved, and it's changed because now as the dollars have risen, there's concerns on both sides. Player side is, how do I make sure I get my money? And the school side is, how do I make sure I don't have to pay this money if this particular student athlete doesn't honor the deal or does what we saw at Tennessee, where he's protesting and he's sort of destroying the team chemistry.
I got a question because you just brought up the portal, and Matt brings up a question. Matt, another a lawyer as well, as he's working for the Predators right now, so he's at their last game. His question is, and it makes sense, why does the winter transfer portal window in college football open on January 1st when the playoffs are going on for 3 weeks? To me, that's like free agency in football being open while the playoffs are going on and you're actively recruiting a quarterback. Lamar Jackson's being recruited. It makes no sense. You can't wait 3 weeks until the playoffs are over.
It gets back to the problem, which is you have an organization running collegiate sports, which really, I hate to say it, does not do an effective job. And the problem they have, the system they have is really antiquated when it comes to changing rules. Things can't change very quickly. So we have seen it change a little bit in the portal over the last couple of years, a shrinking of it, a moving of dates. But you're right. I mean, as long as the season's still going on for anybody, why should any coach or any school be handicapped in terms of wanting to participate in the portal if it's already open? Ridiculous.
I got to laugh. You guys got. I'm reading these. I'm reading the questions, and Barry is just, boy, he's blowing it up. He's going off. And Howard Bloom says, "Chill." Barry, poll question: should Barry chill out? Basically, he's going crazy here with all this stuff. So we got a minute and 4 seconds in. Anybody else have questions out there? I mean, we got to a lot of them. I'm just trying to think here. Barry, can you afford Benny? No. Greg,
what are your thoughts?
Okay, go ahead, Dale.
I was going to ask Greg your thoughts on the Power 4 schools and even some of the mid-majors and even some HBCUs didn't want to do a spring game because they were worried about
poaching,
their players being taken away. And then, what I see, my little assessment, even the basketball players, the basketball coaches are all coaches in college athletics. They have to re-recruit their players to see if who's going to come back the next season. I mean, you could easily have 15 guys on a basketball team, and I mean, you lose all of them because they go into the portal chasing a bag. I mean, it's got to be one of the most challenging times in athletics as well.
Well, it's very difficult on the coaches because they have to be so cognizant, obviously, of winning first and foremost, because that's the separator. But what happens is, and I used an analogy last week with one of my mid-major schools when I was talking to their athletic director and their president. Remember John Calipari several years ago? He engaged the one-and-done mentality, right?
Yes, at Kentucky.
He wanted the players to come to him. I know you're only going to be here for a year, but I'm going to develop you. I'm going to make you NBA ready, and you're going to be a top first-round pick and make millions of dollars.
It worked.
Now, it's not an exact analogy, but I think for some of these mid-major schools, and let's be honest, we saw a kid this year lead Florida to the national championship. Where did he start?
Iona.
At Iona.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So he got a lot of great experience there, and he was plucked. But I think what I said to the school was, look, you might have to embrace a different concept, which is you're going to recruit athletes. Now, Rick Pitino has said he's not recruiting any more high school players. He's only going to go in the portal. So maybe for some of the mid-majors, their ability to survive and thrive is to recruit the best athletes, get the best basketball players they can. But instead of trying to say, you must stay with us for 4 years, entertain this uniqueness like Calipari did and say, hey, look, we understand you might not stay with us for 4 years, and try and seek a 2-year commitment, maybe utilizing the new NIL system as of July 1, where you get a student athlete to sign a 2-year agreement for a certain amount of money. And then at least you have some consistency at the mid-major level for a couple of years. Other than that, what you're saying, Al, is completely right. It's a world of insanity. You have, coaches of Power 4 of the larger schools actually send scouts to watch some of these mid-major kids, potentially. So if it's like scouting high school players used to be when we were young. Now it's scouting the smaller schools to try and pick off some of these kids. And, as I said earlier, the flip side is, unfortunately, for a lot of these kids at some of these mid-major schools, even some of the Power 4 schools who are not the top players, who might be 10, 11, 12, 13 on the roster, they're all running to the portal thinking the grass is going to be greener. A number of them are going to be left holding the bag because they might not get another opportunity to get a $60,000 scholarship and to go play basketball and maybe get $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 of NAL money. Might not happen. So there's a lot of risks on both sides, but I do think the strategy, if I was a coach on a small mid-major school, is I would try and adopt that John Calipari. I can't believe I'm saying I'd adopt anything John Calipari does, but I would probably adopt that mentality, which is we welcome you. We know you're not going to stay for 4 years, but we want to try and get a 2-year commitment and entertain that, help that player develop, become a better player, and then you become a school who's going to be well known for that, and then hopefully get a lot of good players that way, and maybe have some kids who do stay for the 3rd and 4th year.
Might.
Well, Greg, so we've gone on, so we're an hour and 8 minutes in, and as Johnny Carson used to say on the Tonight Show, well, the clock on the wall is just falling on the floor. I love my Johnny Carson quotes there. But listen, I want to first of all thank everyone out there for all the questions for Greg. And Greg, thanks so much for taking time. I know you're in Arizona, and we did this in short notice. Again, Howard for setting this whole thing up, but great appreciation for everything you've done. Man. I just want to say right now, Greg, I think that if there's going to be a commissioner of some kind of a collegiate sports and someone that could put some guardrails to this and some sense to it, I'm voting you. Sports Talking Sports, we want Greg Clifton running this thing because I'm telling you, you've got common sense.
Well, I hate to say it, that's what a lot of it boils down to. And the other thing, too, is the ability to react to the environment that we're in quickly. You can't say it's going to take us a year to pass a new rule or a new regulation.
Yeah.
This is 2025, not 1970. And that's the problem. I think a lot of these things, as you said earlier, Les, going back to O'Bannon, if O'Bannon would have been treated the right way back then, we would have had none of this.
I totally
agree. You
agree.
wouldn't have
100%.
had any of these lawsuits. You wouldn't have seen, the Alston case and a Supreme Court case where, you had the NCAA arguing a case at the Supreme Court level, not to burden you if you're not a lawyer, but people who are lawyers know what I mean, where their final and most important argument was based on dicta, which means it wasn't even true part of a decision of a case. It was kind of an ancillary part of it. And that's why they lost 9-0. And that's why they gave Judge Kavanaugh the platform in his opinion to really lambast the NCAA. And ever since then, we've been in this lawsuit react, lawsuit settle environment, which has really hampered the NCAA paying tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars in legal fees, not changing anything, continuing to lose, and seeing things really continue to dissipate where, as you said a minute ago, Les, where you might see the Power 4 having a lot more power than the NCAA even does. Mm-hmm. So time will tell.
I think that's where it's going eventually. Well, first of all, Greg, again, thanks so much for taking time to come on. Value this interview, all of your wisdom, and we'll be using it moving forward. Gentlemen, Al and Benny, stay with us, you guys, because very special announcement after our break. But let's say goodbye to Mr. Greg Clifton. Greg, thanks so much again. Greg.
Esquire, I appreciate it, man. Your first class.
Thanks for the opportunity. Nice meeting both of you, and I love your poster behind you there, Al.
Right on.
Oh my God, he's a rattler in waiting. Well, Greg, listen, stay cool out there. We'll catch up.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Take care, buddy.
All right. That was Greg Clifton. We'll be right back with more of yourself, myself, and Benny after this.
It's tax time, and the tax ladies of Shiloh are ready to serve your tax needs. Since 2011, the tax ladies have been voted Best of Brunswick for tax preparation. We are here to help new arrivals to the area, and we are experts in multi-state returns. Every return is reviewed to make sure you get all the credits and deductions you deserve. Open all year, we also provide bookkeeping and payroll services. Trust the experts. Come to the tax ladies.
Welcome back to Sports Talking Sports. I'm your host, L. Steven Swartz. Maybe I'm just going to, something, Benny, it might improve my golf game if I just go by L. Steven. I don't know. This Les Swartz isn't playing much golf these days. Man in the middle, my man from Jacksonville, Al, the Rattler Chester, voice of the A&M Rattlers, basketball and football broadcast with Melvin Beal, and former national championship quarterback in 1978. And on the right, New York calls him their own. I don't think so. He's now in Leland. Benny the Bookster. All right, guys. I think it was great. I think we got a lot of things, answered a lot of things. I mean, listen, I don't know if you can actually answer anything because I don't think anybody has any answers. I think what Gregg did was help us understand this a little bit better.
Yeah, it makes your head spin. Everything, it's like totally out of control. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I mean, but I guess that's the way the world is, people sign contracts like in the NFL. It happens all the time. Got wide receivers the highest paid. He signs this multi-million-dollar contract. Then a year later, another guy signs a thing. Oh, I want more money. I'm supposed to be the highest paid. Well, you signed your contract. I mean,
honor it, live up to it.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't
matter. Hey, we're giving you $34 million a year. That's pretty good.
Yeah, but Al, you always say, right? We talk about it all the time. We're in a microwave society, instant gratification. People want stuff now. They don't want to wait. If you're a player in college, you're not going to wait your turn. I want playing time now, regardless if it's a good situation or not. I'm going there. I'm going here. I just don't get it. It's crazy. But listen, guys, it's interesting. We've had a long run on this show. What, year and a half, almost 2 full years. I think we're 80. Tony, how many episodes? 80 plus? Pretty close. Yeah, pretty close to 80 episodes. This is bigger than I ever thought it was going to be. I thought when Benny and I did our very first show, we'd have our friends joining in and stuff like that, and that would be it, And we ended up with, my God, over 1,100 subscribers. We've had, I don't know how many countless viewers. I mean, we've had a couple shows exceed thousands and thousands of views. Our shorts have done really, really well. But it's a lot to put on the show. It's a lot of work. A lot of time. I know that, Tony, he's, he doesn't do this full time. He has other things going on in his life, and he really devotes a lot of his time to Sports Talking Sports and does an amazing job. I've always said he makes me look better than I am. He makes me sound better than I am. He makes me smarter than I really am. And what he does is he makes the show a first-class show. There's no doubt in my mind that the production value of this show rivals anything on ESPN, CBS Sports, Fox Sports. And it's all due to Tony. He does an amazing job.
I'll co-sign that. Hats off to you, Tony.
Which is why we call him the Wizard. Great
job.
So, guys, I thought about it and I go, well, let's see. I'm going to throw you guys some love as well. Okay, first of all, Al, you came on as a guest, Vince Coleman. You went to school with Vince. He was lucky enough. I didn't know who you were. He said, "Oh, Al." I said, "I think I remember him. I think he beat UMass." I was cursing the TV at him when he did that. And you came on as a guest. You were such a great guest, so informative, so enlightening. Your personality was great. People wanted you back more and more. Benny and I, Tony, we all thought about Joni. Said, let's ask Al if he'll come on and be part of the team. And you did. Graciously, you decided to come on. And I know you got a lot of stuff going on in your life too. You got your grandkids and you got your endeavors with A&M and things like that. The recent Hall of Fame. You're a man in high demand, and we really appreciate everything. And not just as a Sports Talking Sports co-host, but as a friend. We got a chance to meet you, break bread, have a great time in Florida, and you and I will remain friends forever. And it's pretty awesome. It's pretty awesome. And then, Ben, everyone thinks I've known you for 25, 30, 40 years, and we've known each other for less than 3. And you're my neighbor, become incredibly good friends, and we hang out and do a lot of things together, play a lot of sports. So I was going to say to everybody out there, it was going to be a farewell show and we weren't going to do this again, but we got a lot of input from a lot of people. I think what we're going to do here is we'll just step away for a little bit, get us give us some time to recharge our batteries out there. I know, again, and I want to thank other people too. First of all all the subscribers, 1,100 plus. I mean, a lot of these people, I don't know who they are. 90% of plus of these people, I have no idea who they are. So I want to thank all of you for tuning in and being a subscriber. In watching Sports Talking Sports. To my loyal viewers, every Wednesday night, 8 p.m., first at 7, and then they move to 8. Listen, I know people have things to do, and I really appreciate the ones who tune on every Wednesday, who come on once a month Wednesday. You know who you are. You're all over the country. I owe you a debt of gratitude. I can't even speak right now. But I want to thank you all for making the show what it is, because without you, we don't have a show. The questions, you drive the show, you help drive. And that's what makes us unique. We have questions from the audience. It's live participation. It's the great interaction. And you help us grow and get there. So I want to thank everybody there. Again, Tony's the best. Joni, I don't know, without Joni, none of this happens. She's an amazing chat girl. I call her Joni my chat girl. She's my amazing fiance. I love her to death. Miss you, hon. And wish you were here, right here in the seat next to me here while we're doing this. And you bring so much to the show and so much to me and give me the confidence to go ahead and do this. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of a break here at Sports Talking Sports. Maybe we'll reconvene come August, September timeframe. We'll give everyone time to recharge their batteries. Say to Al, have a great spring. Enjoy your summer. Obviously, we'll be talking about everything, but enjoy your son, the grandkids, your wife, and your whole family, your whole circle down in Jacksonville. Benny, of course, I don't know. You'll probably pop into my house later on and have a drink. Who knows? We'll see what happens.
Yes,
but
I will.
but
Yes, I will.
but I really appreciate everything. And we'll see each other on the golf course. So for everyone out there, this is not a final salute. We're not saying goodbye forever, but we're certainly gonna go on a little hiatus here. So again, this is Les Swartz for Swartz Talking Sports. Thanking everyone out there for being part of our show and making us a little bit better. So thank you so much. And check out some shorts. We'll see you when we see you. So good night, everybody.
Take care, everybody.